Hi there, welcome to Step 56, my reviews of Tai Lopez's 67 Steps. This one is called Floating Across the Pacific Ocean on a Raft and Why Sitting Bull Liked to be Shot at, the most important of all personality traits. That's a very, very long title. I'm going to refer back to the title in a little bit, but let's get right into it. And you know, there's a lot of you listen to Ty's things, or you go online, or Tony Robbins, and all these people have, you know, the personality traits that you need to have, or that you should work on, or that you should develop. And this one, Ty says one of his most important ones that he values most highly is this idea of courage. Now, right off the bat, I actually think he's wrong. He's not talking about courage, but he's talking about something else. But let's get on with it anyway. Courage, you know, there's no courage without fear. You got to remember that. Every coin has two sides, you know. So, in the world right now, there's a lot of negative momentum, I think it's fair to say. You know, people are getting fatter. In the developed world now, really, there's more overweight people than underweight people. And the average person, certainly in the US, doesn't save any money. I think the number Ty quotes is about people save about 1% of their earnings, which is pretty dismal. And, you know, this gap between rich and poor is growing. So things are not going really so well in the great social experiment we call humanity. So, if you are afraid of what the neighbors think, if you want to go with the masses, really, you're kind of in trouble. And you should stop watching now and forget about the 67 steps and just rely on something else. Because if you are going to go with the average is not so good. You need to go against the current momentum, this momentum of obesity, this momentum of the shrinking, the povertization of the middle class. So, how do you do that? What do you need to do to go against the flow? You need courage. You need courage to say, I'm going to use my logical tools to assess this situation. This situation is not good. I'm going to do something different. I don't care what the masses are doing. Ty is a good example, very interesting example of his grandmother, who was born in Germany and was a young teen at the time the Nazis came in, and she said, "This is not right. This is dangerous," and she left. The rest of her family didn't leave. So I don't like to co-opt somebody else's family story, but that's a very interesting one, I think. But that's an incredible amount of courage. Certainly there were lots of people at that time who knew Hitler was nuts and who knew that things were going to go wrong. But a lot of people didn't go against it. A lot of people certainly didn't leave the country. So that took an incredible amount of courage. Ty goes on to talk about what must be his all-time favorite biography or autobiography, which is this Louis Zamperini guy, the guy who was an Olympic athlete, crashed in the Pacific Ocean during World War II, stayed alive on a life raft for 40-odd days, captured by the Japanese and so on and so on. I almost spoke in Japanese there for a second. Ty loves this story, and because there's so many things that are encapsulated in that story, and in the one we're focused on today is this idea of courage. Now, this is where I would argue that Zamperini, of course, had a certain amount of courage, but Zamperini himself says that it wasn't courage that got him through, it was preparedness, and level-headedness. Is that courage? I don't know. It's kind of courage. I don't necessarily see that in that particular instance we're talking about there's a courage there. Certainly not this kind of social courage that we're talking Tai talks about in Hollywood, which is a crazy place. But people to succeed in Hollywood, you have to be very thick-skinned. You have to handle rejection all the time. You have to have a very good agent, and that's going against the flow. Very few people can go to Hollywood and make it, not based on talent, but based on their ability to push themselves through. Is that a kind of courage? It's a kind of courage, I guess. I don't know. And then his final example was Sitting Bull, this story, which I think is probably a little bit apocryphal, that Sitting Bull would go out and sit near the end of the range of American forces bullets, and sit there and smoke a pipe and, to prove his bravery to, basically he was proving it to his people, not so much to the Americans. But, I don't know if that story is true. It sounds like a bit crazy to me, and I don't know if that's courage either. But, so I don't want to take those examples too far, because certainly there is courage in going against the flow, using your logic and doing what you've learned in these 67 steps, what you've learned by reading these things and thinking about these things. And courage is something you have to develop, it's like a muscle. And so you have to go about using it as often as possible, Of course, there's times to back down. That's the other thing. Courage is not just about, being foolhardy, You need to be courageous at the logical time and choose a logical direction. And one of Tai's good examples of courage is, when you're at a conference and you go to a conference and there's people who are speaking there, and often you mill around afterwards and there's the guy standing right there. You can go and talk to him, if you're prepared. You can go and talk to him. And if you don't do it out of fear, that's a huge wasted opportunity. I can speak from personal experience. You would be really surprised how accessible almost everybody is, especially in the age of social media. You'd be really surprised who will respond to your tweets if you tweet to them, and they'll tweet back. So if you have a reason to, if you really have a question, and you're not just begging free advice or something like this, if you really have a give and take, do it. Send them a letter, meet them at a conference. That's definitely a kind of courage. But people are really afraid of speaking, which is very interesting. Certainly public speaking. What's the worst that can happen? You're going to, look stupid. So you start out in a small crowd, That's why one of the things I love is Toastmasters organization. I think Toastmasters is a great place to practice public speaking. Tai says, you can go to a comedy club and do a stand-up routine. If you happen to live in a place that has comedy clubs, that lets you do a stand-up routine. And then he goes off on this thing about taking a cold shower every day. Again, I don't know if that's courage. It's courage because it's kind of you have a fear about doing it, but I'm not necessarily sure if that's courage. So, and then he gives this quote. I can't remember the source of it, but millionaires are just people who had the courage to do what they believed was right in business. And I think that's definitely true. And that's the kind of courage we're talking about here, So that's my take on this step. Hope I didn't ramble too long. I've had a little bit of a pause, so I'm getting back into flow here. I had 3 questions, as usual, to end this thing up. What's an example of an opportunity you missed out on because of fear? Think of those examples like at a conference or meeting somebody or whatever. Who's somebody you can model your life on? I don't know, Louis Zamperini is the best example. It's an inspiring example. But, you can read lots of biographies and autobiographies of people who are courageous. Read them, absorb them, be inspired by them. Who's somebody you can model your life on? And number 3 was, what's a small thing you can do today, a practical thing you can do today to build your courage? Tai suggests taking a cold shower, but I don't know if that's courageous or not. I would suggest trying to get in touch with somebody in your field that, is ahead of you. Anyway, there you go. 3 questions. Answer them yourselves. Do whatever you want. Watch another video of mine that's coming up soon. And we'll see you soon. Step 56. Bye.